It was a dark night, and the air was thick with tension as the soldiers crouched behind the crumbling walls of an abandoned city there. Breaths were shallow, their hands gripping their weapons with a force that turned knuckles white. Every shadow seemed to shift every gust of wind. Carried whispers of unseen danger. The enemy was out there somewhere, lurking, waiting, analyzing the movements of those who thought they were prepared for battle, but deep within the human mind flaws lay hidden like cracks in the foundation of an ancient fortress. The first shot rang out, a sharp explosion of sound that sent adrenaline surging through veins. Hearts pounded like war drums. Bodies reacted before minds could think, ducking, flinching, retreating. But the problem with instinct was that it was not always right. Fear had been ingrained in human reflexes since the dawn of time, designed for survival in the wilderness, not for the calculated chaos of modern combat. The body wanted to recoil when it should have pressed forward. The eyes wanted to blink when they should have remained open. The hands wanted to tighten when they should have remained loose. Jake was the fastest in his unit, but speed did not matter when the brain was wired for hesitation. As bullets zipped past him, he felt the old reflexes take over. His muscles stiffened, his breathing hitched, his eyes darted, searching for safety. But in that moment of hesitation, he realized too late that the enemy had already seen him. His body wanted to run, his mind screamed to attack. But he was caught between two instincts, and that was the fatal flaw. In training they had told him about the fight or flight response, but what they never explained was the frozen moment between the two, the split second where a soldier became a victim, where an opponent became a predator, where the human mind struggled against its own programming. The enemy had no such delay. Their reflexes were honed not by nature, but by relentless discipline and remorseless intent. They did not hesitate, they did not freeze, they struck when the mind of their prey was still deciding what to do. To his left, Carter made the same mistake. He flinched when a grenade landed near him. Instead of kicking it away, his body recoiled. His mind screamed to act, but instincts had already betrayed him. The explosion ripped through the air, sending shockwaves through the shattered city. There was no room for mistakes, but human reflexes were full of them. Blinking at the wrong time, dodging into danger, mistaking movement for safety. These were not just flaws, they were death sentences. The enemy knew it, they had studied it, they understood that humans were predictable, that their survival instincts could be used against them. A sudden loud noise would make them flinch, an unexpected movement would force them to react without thinking, a feint would cause them to move straight into the real attack. Their biology was their weakness, and no amount of training could fully erase the reflexes that had been passed down for thousands of years. Jake knew he had only one chance. If he let his instincts control him, he was dead. If he hesitated, he was dead. If he trusted the natural reactions of his body, he was dead. The only way to survive was to abandon the very thing that made him human, to override the reflexes, to ignore the fear, to move not with instinct, but with intention. The next time the enemy fired, he did not flinch, he did not blink, he did not hesitate. He moved like a machine, precise, deliberate, ruthless, and in that moment, he was no longer just a man, he was something else, something that could not be predicted, something that could not be controlled, something that had broken free from the hidden weaknesses of human combat reflexes. The battle raged on. The night swallowed the screams, the gunfire, the chaos, leaving only the clash of will against nature, instincts against training, survival against inevitability. Jake moved through the ruined city like a shadow, his heart no longer hammering in panic, his breath steady, his mind clearer than it had ever been. The others around him still fought against their own bodies, their own weaknesses, flinching when they should have struck, pausing when they should have advanced, freezing when the enemy was already closing in. He saw it again and again, Carter falling because he hesitated for a fraction of a second, getting caught because his reflexes forced him to take cover when he should have counterattacked. The enemy knew every weakness, they exploited every flaw, they used the very nature of human survival against them. Loud noises, sudden movements, unpredictable attacks, they turned the instincts of their prey into weapons, and one by one, the soldiers who had trusted their own bodies to protect them fell into the trap. But Jake was different now. He had seen through it. He had shattered the illusion of control. that his instincts had over him. He no longer let the old reflexes decide his fate. When the enemy rushed him, he did not step back, he moved forward. When a shot rang out, he did not flinch, he tracked the source and fired. When an explosion erupted near him, he did not duck blindly, he calculated the safest move and executed it without hesitation. He had become something beyond human, something colder, something sharper, something unstoppable. The battle stretched into the early hours of the morning. Bodies littered the streets, smoke curled through the ruins, the echoes of violence fading into silence. Jake stood among the wreckage, his rifle still warm, his mind still calculating, his body still refusing to obey the old instincts. He had survived, not because he was faster, not because he was stronger, not because he was luckier. He had survived because he had rewritten the code of his own nature. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in hues of blood and fire, he looked around at the battlefield and understood something terrible, something final. The others would never make it, not all of them. Some might learn to resist their reflexes, some might train themselves to overcome hesitation, but most would always be prisoners of their biology, held back by the same flaws that had been ingrained in humanity since the beginning of time. He had escaped it, but in doing so he had lost something he could never get back. A voice crackled over his radio, calling for survivors, calling for regrouping, calling for those who were still standing to return. Jake looked at his trembling hands, his unblinking eyes, his mind that no longer felt fear, no longer felt hesitation, no longer felt human. He answered the call and walked away from the battlefield, leaving behind the bodies of those who had fought not just against the enemy, but against their own nature, leaving behind the proof that human combat reflexes were not just a weakness, but a death sentence, leaving behind the last part of himself that had once been just another soldier, just another man, just another victim of instincts designed for a world long gone.